Awesome. Well, again, thank you again for Reforge for helping set this up, and for everyone for joining. I'm incredibly excited to be here with you all talking about AI upskilling at Canva. So at Canva, everyone is deeply passionate about democratizing design for a community of 240 million people. And over the last few years, we haven't just been transforming our product to be AI first, but we're also transforming like how we get our work done. So today we're excited to share how we've been empowering our entire like 5,000 person organization to be working with AI. Just a quick intro. My name is John Milinovich. I've been at Canva for just over 2.5 years and acting as the head of generative AI product for the last year and a half. I'm based in down in like Los Gatos, Campbell area of the Bay Area. So today we're going to start by giving a quick overview of Canva and like our history of building with AI. Then we're going to talk about the three phases of how we've been using AI internally to change how we work. And finally, we're going to distill down some of our like key learnings from this journey into a few actionable takeaways that we think that teams of all sizes can really learn from. Just a quick overview on Canva. Canva was founded in 2012 and currently has just over 5,000 employees. We have over 240 million monthly active users and are doing over 3.3 billion in annual recurring revenue. This is including over 100 million students and teachers, over 95% of like Fortune 500 companies, and we have over 27 million paying seats. So super, super exciting to be working at such a meaningful scale and really getting to take Canva's mission of empowering the world to design and really actually seeing that come to life. We've been working with AI for over 8 years now. Some of the earliest kind of use cases here were in like search and recommendations first to really help personalize and improve our content marketplace, helping users find the perfect template or that really excellent element or photo to go in their design. We kind of took things to the next level in 2021 when we acquired the startup Kaleido, which was best known for their Remove BG product, which then became like one of the hallmark features of the Canva app experience. Then in 2022, we launched Magic Media and Magic Write, which are first forays into diffusion and large language model-based features in our product. We then followed this in 2023 and 2024 with the expansion of our Magic Studio suite of like dozens of AI features integrated across our product offering. And then in 2024, we added Dreamlab, which is a really exciting new image generation tool to Magic Studio following the acquisition of Leonardo AI. And then earlier this year, we had some major launches with Canva AI, along with Canva Code and our MCP server, as well as a few other really, really exciting things. Just a quick note on Canva AI. Canva AI represents like some of our point of view of what an AI native design workflow might look like. And it really represents a major step in us reimagining Canva in the age of AI. So with Canva AI, users can create designs, images, docs, and widgets, starting from a text prompt or their own content, and then all create things that can all be seamlessly like edited within the Canva editor experience. So part of the reason we've been able to lean so heavily into AI is that fundamentally AI is an accelerant to our mission of empowering the world to design. Like our position has been and always will be that human creativity cannot be replaced, but it can be like greatly augmented and made more accessible to people. So that's a bit of an overview of our product and kind of Canva overall, but AI isn't just changing our product. It's also very deeply and fundamentally changing how we do our work. Even though we have a lot of deep expertise, AI expertise in pockets of our company internally, not nearly enough of it has been required to actually transform the way that our over 5,000 person workforce works every day. So like a lot of companies, we faced a really critical question. How do you take this individual excitement and translate it into a company-wide transformation? How do you go from, some people are doing cool things to, everyone is fundamentally more effective? So our approach centers on three core principles that I'll keep coming back to throughout this talk. First is empowerment, so giving people agency over their AI journey, not just like mandating tools. Second is solving real problems, not using AI because it's trendy, but actually using it because it eliminates genuine pain. And third is being human first and remembering that the goal is actually augmenting human capabilities, not replacing humans. So let's fast forward to today and then we'll walk through how we got here. So standing here today, I can confidently say that AI is deeply embedded into Canva and how we work every day. 84% of our employees are weekly active users of generative AI tools. not because they're being forced to, but because they actually find that they're more effective when they do it. As examples of this, our people team is now saving over 6,000 hours every performance review cycle, which is literally like 6 years worth of time that is saved every year that our teams now get to spend doing other high leverage things instead. Our sales reps are saving 3 hours each week in preparation for their calls and client meetings. And these aren't just like projections, these are measured realities that have actually had material changes to our business. So these kind of represent points of our deep focus in bringing this impact to every Canva across our business, no matter their specialty, their role, or their team. And we've made huge progress in doing this to date, but there's just still so much more for us to do to ensure that everyone within Canva feels empowered using AI. So these have been incredible outcomes, but the voyage to getting here has also just been super fascinating with a lot of learnings along the way. The journey from there to here has gone through a couple of distinct phases that each taught us something critical that really feed into our future plans, and we also think that will translate to many of you. I think what's really important to understand is that this transformation isn't about the technology, it's really about people. It's about culture, it's about creating the conditions where 5,000 people can actually each have their own breakthrough moments with AI. So this first phase is we call the open exploration, which is a bit of the Wild West. Everyone was experimenting with these like bottoms up energy. Usage was centered in like technical and product teams and really diffused out from there. Phase two is what we called AI everywhere, which really had an emphasis on access and exploration. It was all about like letting teams figure out what tools and use cases worked best for their needs. The energy was like super, super infectious and created opportunities alongside some like very real coordination challenges. And then phase three, which is AI impact and where we are now, is all about this like more systematic, measurable, and intentional rollout where AI is like deeply innate, daily use, and done team wide. What I'll call out is that the transition between these phases wasn't super obvious, but we're able to do it in a way that put the focus on like, empowering our people, not on trying to like leave them behind or move super fast in the wrong way. What we were able to recognize is that like when these shifts might happen, the most accelerant is like really where some of the most important learnings have come from. So before I deep into each of these three phases, I want to give some massive shout outs to some of the all-stars who've actually helped like lead a lot of these efforts internally. So while I have the pleasure of sharing this story with you all today, it's really through the hard work of like our incredible IT team leads, Sam and Sean, learning designers like Holly, and some of our AI platform product leads like Yolanda and Malad, who've been doing a lot of the hard work of defining and actualizing this plan to make it happen. So these huge gains and hard-won insights are really truly thanks to their commitment and excellence in their craft. And these are really just a few examples of how folks from any team or specialty have had the chance to play a role in our AI transformation, whether that's leading change within their team or sharing knowledge company-wide. All right, so let's dive into the open exploration phase. So while it wasn't clearly labeled at the time, there was just a lot of AI exploration happening before it was like codified into a more formal strategy. ChatGPT came out in late September 2022. Canva had launched its first LLM integration, Magic Write, before the end of that year. And we were, started offering ChatGPT enterprise accounts as early as late 2023, but the rollout wasn't really in every pocket of the organization at the time. This period really felt like opening the floodgates of possibility where everything felt worth exploring, and much of that exploration was really kind of done more independently. So we kind of had these like 5,000 individual employees who were kind of each finding their own path with AI. One of the first things we did to try and help it kind of drive awareness and education here was launching an AI school internally, just a simple internal site which had a lot of courses that anybody could take using Canva's education product. It gave people permission to start and also made it clear that it was okay for them to start spending some of their time exploring this. Just some of the example content that we had in AI school were things like, educating people on what large language models are in a very approachable way, or flagging a lot of the key best practices for prompting and gotchas for things like how AI can actually hallucinate. Part of one of the cool things that came from this phase was a lot of just like excitement and emerging use cases. So these are some of the examples of GPTs that people started building and actually sharing internally during this phase. So you have things like Talent GPT, which helped people write their job postings, PMM GPT, which helped them answer their product marketing questions, or Chat George PT, which helped people with like some of their account prospecting and pre-sales work. So again, really the big learnings from phase one is it's just taught us something like really critical about that you can't like stop people from using AI because they're gonna find a way to do it. So the question is whether you harness that energy or actually just like let it kind of dissipate into chaos. we had that energy, and clearly that presented us with an opportunity to really leverage it, which really then takes us into phase two, which we think about and call AI everywhere. So phase two actually started from a challenge from our leadership team to our IT team leads, Sam and Sean. The prompt was like, how do we make AI available to everyone, and how can we actually announce it next week? So within a short period of time, like we went from having 300 to 5,000 employees who actually had like secure access to all of these kind of more modern and leading tools. I think this also demonstrates one of the key tenets of this AI transformation, which is that sometimes you don't need 18 months of RFPs and docs being sent around. You just need like a clear mandate and an empowered team, and in this case, 6 days. During this period, we were able to like roll out access to a few key tools. This included Glean and ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Magic Studio, of course, which is our internal products. And a question we get a lot is why not just choose one? And I think it's actually a pretty clear answer that it's just choice. LLMs have so many different pros and cons, and the industry is moving so fast. But we wanted to empower our teams to be the ones to help figure out what's best for different use cases instead of trying to decide this in a super top-down manner. So through this period, our IT team also started to build some tools for some of our most requested workflow improvements to both start saving time, but also to start showing a wider group of the company some of the potential here. So this is actually a great example for performance reviews that was built as a Claude project, where users are able to share like a stream of consciousness of feedback about some a peer, and it was then formatted to help use our internal role profiles and value pillars. This actually was used by like almost 3,000 employees internally, and actually was like huge impact to people's kind of appreciation about what you can actually do when leveraging some of these modern tools. This is another example for performance reviews that was actually created as a GPT. So people could just head to the Canva custom GPT library, select the Chat GDF assistant, and then actually get prompted with some of the initial questions and help them kind of answer them to get started. I think the beauty of this is it actually helps structure feedback according to the 12 skills framework that we use a lot internally at Canva, and also help use a lot of like more Canva specific language when kind of communicating feedback. So again, this was something that was super well received and seen as a clear kind of North Star for a lot of how we can take a lot of this more rote work that people know is super important, but maybe takes more time than they'd like, and actually bring kind of some new technology to the table to help solve it. We also started using Glean agents to help start automating repetitive help requests. So this led to like 35% ticket reduction and faster resolution times for our teams internally, so that you could actually then go to these like internal Slack channels to help get ask questions about our step 2 program, which is all about kind of giving back to the community, and actually get questions about things like, hey, where can I sign up for volunteering events? This was also another great example that led to a lot of people appreciating the opportunity here. During this period, we also refreshed a lot of our AI school content to help people learn from the examples of things that their peers were doing. So what we did here is added a lot of reference examples for things like writing using tone of voice that are relevant to all employees, as well as things like product ideation for people that are more in like the product or design specialties. So a lot of our intention here was hearing a lot of the things people were already using AI tools for, or who had desire for using them but weren't sure how, and then actually start packaging those up into a way that we could then bring more visibility and awareness to all employees about how to do these things by really learning from each other. Okay, so this takes us into our third phase, which is what we call AI impact. So this shift was really catalyzed when our company leads started to ask like a really like deeply critical question. So like all this like, innovation and usage sounds amazing, but how do we actually start to unlock the next level of systematic impact across our business? So part of this was also then rolling out like new suites of tools. So in addition to some of the ones that we had mentioned earlier, there's also like some more kind of coding and product related ones around things like Relevance AI, Cursor and Cloud Code, GitHub Copilot, and Source Graph Cody. So a lot of the intention here was that we want to just really try to open up people's ability to leverage whatever the best tools might be for their own individual workflows and be able to then make that available to the people who would need them the most. A super important and key unlock here was actually finding a new operating model that was pioneered by our IT team focused on how to actually distribute a lot of the like operational challenges, upskilling, and onboarding that would be required when you're working with like a new set of tools internally. A key example or insight that came out of this was this concept called AI exemplars. So we had is like trying to have one person per team who's actually responsible for sharing a lot of these like new learnings, both within their team, but also then acting as a point of contact to roll those things up more centrally, where then we were able to run these like monthly sessions and show what was working across across the board. So this helped us actually continue to move in a more decentralized manner while also creating the right feedback channels for us to still actually understand where there was potential and where leverage was being created. Generally speaking, what we want to do is help push innovation to each individual and team to help own their own outcomes and define their own success metrics. Because we think that especially when things are moving as fast as they are with AI and frontier models today, with just by the time you would put anything overly centralized and top down together, it's going to be pretty out of date. One really fascinating thing here is that since we've been working diligently on this for quite a while, we've been able to actually get a clear sense of how use cases evolve and diffuse within the company over time. So when we take some things like performance reviews, what we start to see is that people it starts with people who are kind of figuring out how to use LLMs to improve processes for themselves. And then they start sharing their work and best practices with other people on their team. And then what happens is that many teams within a department start doing this in parallel, and then ultimately create a more synthesized approach into a more holistic rollout. And then this gets elevated and then transferred across all Canvanauts internally. So fundamentally, this represents like a shift from this mindset or kind of verbiage around augmentation and assistance, which again is, I think, the general value and proposition for these tools in general, to actually helping us focus on specific use cases where we could automate more rote work and create solutions that can work in the background. So just even now zooming in on a lot of our efforts in the first half of this year, we've been super focused on AI skill building, and it's been pretty incredible to see a lot of the results so far. We've seen over 14,000 learning hours with AI, which has been just a massive shift since the last year in only the first half of this year. This also then helps us represent over like 86% of Canvanauts that are engaged in our AI learning programs, with literally 17 out of 20 being weekly active users of these new AI tools. So to us, this like helps us really like understand that a lot of the effort that we're putting into putting these programs together and the emphasis that we're putting behind how important this is going to be, the changing workflows, is actually starting to come to life. So while we'd been running these like transformation programs in various pockets across the business, it was really 2 months ago when we moved to a more coordinated and like company-wide like transformation effort. We launched our AI Discovery Week, which has really marked a huge moment for us, which is a global initiative that packed over 25,000 hours of learning content into a single week. We literally picked a week that we let the entire company like stop its other work to start to actually upskill and leverage this like really thoughtfully curated internal programming. We had everything from show and tell sessions to hackathons, internal speakers. We had competitions and so many other ways to just really try and help like keep people engaged. This led to over 200 new use cases for AI being identified internally where it can improve our individual workflows and the team workflows. And also was led to 15 that are now already being productionized. This also kind of set a new bar for us in terms of our internal culture, really celebrating like how important it is for us to like really lean into this like culture of permission to experiment and actually like celebrating a lot of like people's failures or learnings along the way as like really important things to share and give focus to. So before going any further, we also need to address, like, I think one of the things that a lot of people were thinking, but maybe we're more concerned to ask about is, hey, is our goal here to just automate ourselves out of our jobs? We decided that we really wanted to address this like very, very head on, because in our world, the reality is quite clear. AI is not going to replace you, but using AI will make you way better at your job than somebody who like isn't using AI at all. So I think we see our job is, making sure that Canvanauts are on the right side of that equation. And really, company leadership made that commitment extremely clear. We're not using AI to reduce headcount, period. We're investing in time, tools, and training. AI is about augmentation, it's not about replacement, right? And this kind of reframing of this as being like a threat to an opportunity was super, super crucial for making this land well internally, especially among people who might have been more skeptical of the technology to begin with. Okay, so now kind of shifting from talking about a lot of these three phases at Canva into some of the playbook and how some of the like more transferable learnings here. What we really noticed was that the teams that were achieving truly breakthrough results with AI were actually doing a few things more consistently. So we started to actually write this down in a way that we think any team or organization might also find super useful. So step one is really just like encouraging AI curiosity. It's so important to teach teams how to think bigger using AI. Today, the knobs and dials for AI is mostly invisible to people, which makes it hard to even understand what it can unlock for you. So a lot of what we saw some of these like highest performing teams and individuals doing is really just starting from a position of asking like, what if? So step two, it's really about giving people a base set of things that they can learn from and use, taking a lot of these like wild experiments from step one and then actually figuring out what works and then like leveraging that into step three, which I think might actually be one of the most critical phases. So now you've like found some things that are working. Now it's time to like scale it, which means, changing workflows. It means retraining people. It means, updating documentation. And it means continuing this virtuous cycle of putting things like building something and then learning from it and then repeating that process just in the same way that you would for really like any great products. Step four is then in some cases, we'd actually either take what we learned internally or take ideas from like internal hackathons and build those into our product. So a lot of the way that we've done this is actually leaning into hackathons as a way to elicit a lot of these great ideas and actually kind of encourage more people within the team to actually start thinking about how AI could not just affect how we work ourselves, but also could impact our users. But I think, again, what really made this framework work was that we actually gave people like time, like real time, not, do this on top of your day job, but more like, hey, this kind of is your job. So when we kind of look at this first piece of encouraging curiosity, one of the key pieces of work that our product teams helped do was really try to distill down the different archetypes of AI users within Canva and help make sure that we are aligning all of our education efforts and initiatives to support these various use cases. What we noticed was that there's been more like nuance and texture between a lot of these personas than we might have originally thought. And the process of actually pulling these together was actually very similar to how you might, like a user research team might actually go about like better understanding its users. And what we thought when we went through this mapping, what it actually made clear was there's actually like more personas than we might have actually thought. And in particular, this guide persona was something that we hadn't really appreciated as much before, but we also realized was, quite underutilized. And even doing this caused us to really rethink some of our approach that we took to how we actually do our internal education and evangelism efforts. Another great example of this is an effort that our product platform design team ran, where they all came together and ran a workshop on doing like interactive prototyping. So really what their intention was here was they wanted something that was going to be fun, wasn't like overly tied down to UI or necessarily even to the Canva product, but also could take something that was like more generally approachable arcade games to actually make this be more kind of more fun and more of a social experience. The theme here was like space, and the workshop encouraged people to use Claude to actually make these like more small interactive arcade games. So for a lot of folks, this is actually the first time they had used Claude, which was pretty exciting. And everyone kind of was able to actually help manage making something that was like small and interactive. And I think was like just honestly like a huge success when you talk to the folks on that team. So we kind of then shift into like from the curiosity aspect into how to spotlight best practices. What we've realized is that there's this really powerful feedback loop between individuals having their own aha moments, sharing those with others, and then actually becoming like a champion and then having them continue to elevate others to having their own aha moments. So this wouldn't be a Reforge presentation without a growth flywheel. So like getting this kind of right actually took quite a bit of manual cranks of the shaft up front. But today it's like really, really incredible to see, how fast this is happening across the company and the organization. This has been playing out like incredibly well within our like AI everywhere Slack channel, where Canvanauts are posting their ideas and kind of questions and solutions at like a truly dizzying pace today. We're seeing everything from engineers asking each other for advice on pull request workflows to sharing demos and proof of concepts of things of like kind of productivity tools they built internally to sharing ideas for like different AI native workflows and how they're doing things like user interviews. Like I think for me personally, like reading these like dozens of new ideas that people are sharing every single day is like really one of my like the most my most favorite parts of every morning. One of the things that we didn't quite anticipate was that product teams would really become a huge like central point of this overall transformation. So Yolanda Lee, who's our group product lead for our AI platform, and Milad Javadi from her team really became key connection points across the company. At first, this started to happen more informally with product teams more naturally started helping each other or helping other departments with their AI initiatives. But when we started to see this groundswell, we actually turned this into a company level goal and assigned Yolanda as the goal owner to drive this change and help align resources across the org, but also cross functionally. So an example of this happening was the feedback loop that we created around our Gen AI tooling onboarding sessions that for across our product org of our engineers, products, and designers. Actually help them better learn about like how to leverage our existing internal capabilities in AI platform when they're building new tooling and new functionality. So while we had like incredible engagement and interest from folks, what we actually saw were like some specific opportunities where it could actually make it more tailor-made to this like builder persona. This led to a complete bottoms-up reboot of our product org programming, thinking it more holistically about the way to engage every single specialty more individually. So for exploration and foundational knowledge, we created completely refreshed AI foundations courses. And what we also did was like our learning team created more specialty specific programming that was targeting specific audiences or specific folks within design and product and engineering to actually help make the learning a little bit more targeted and more relevant. And lastly, what we did was we bring all of that together to really supercharge Canva's product thinking through a program called Build with GenAI. This program had 6 live sessions that are being delivered over the course of this year, which are all kind of aligned to the product development process that we use at Canva. So we have sessions about how to start building from 0 to 1 to help support more of like the beginning of our PDP, how to prototype and get feedback in that messy middle, prompt writing and iteration for some of those like later stages of the development, things like latency and cost for pre-production use cases, and even things like responsible AI courses to help think about the ethics of what we're making together. These are all open to all Canvanauts, even though they are focused more on specific specialties. And the focus is really on sharing like practical insights on how to turn AI ideas into real like magical experiences within the Canva context. So this isn't about like vague theory. It really is just like hands-on insights from like teams and people who've done it. And I can just say from having like audited a lot of these classes, they're like incredibly, incredibly interesting and high value. And last, but certainly not least, is really trying to figure out how do you take all of this kind of groundswell of effort and then actually focus it on creating new value for our users. One of the main ways that we've done this outside of our traditional product initiatives has been having a series of hackathons. More recently with this AI Discovery Week hackathon, which we mentioned earlier, which had over 800 people participate, with over half of them actually being outside of our engineering, product, and design organization, which I think to me just really demonstrates how much excitement there is, but also how AI truly is like a democratization tool, which gives a wider range of people the ability to contribute in a way that they weren't even really able to even like a year ago. This hackathon most recently led to over 500 projects, which is just like truly exceptional if you really think about the scale of what that means. Even within like a large 5,000 person organization, 500 projects is like crazy, right? And this is, far more than we could have imagined even in like our wildest dreams. And it gives us all the motivation we need to continue to invest into more and more programming like this. So this amount of excitement, like, really can't be overstated, I would say. And we're happy to say that many of these new features are going to be launching to our users very, very shortly. So there's more to come here soon, but nothing that I can share too much with you all at this moment. Okay, so we kind of distilled this down. We talked about these three phases. We talked about these kind of four key learnings. When we think about like what I would hope that everyone here would actually take away from this and actually go back to their teams with, I think for team leaders, give your teams permission to experiment. Don't just like give them access to tools, but actually give them like the time that they need to really like learn how these things work. Create the right forums for sharing, and really try and measure not just activity, but also measure the impact of what's being created. And for product teams and for individuals in product, you just have like a lot more agency than you might think. That like workflow hack that you've built for yourself, share it with your team. That prompt library that you've been creating and keeping, in your own personal notes, open source it internally. Really try and be the bridge between your technical and your non-technical colleagues. I think the most successful AI adoption happens when product teams embrace their role as catalysts, not just as consumers. So I understand the natural reaction might be that, all this approach works for Canva because, of our scale, our founder, our resources, but I'd really like encourage you to look beyond those more surface level differences. What each of you have in your organizations right now, you have someone who's already built an impressive solution with AI workflows that like would have otherwise consumed unnecessary amounts of time for them to do it. You have like a product team that excels at connecting problems and solutions. I think every company recognizes that AI transformation is critical, but I think very few have a true like clear path to achieving it. So this is kind of how what we've shared here is like some of our blueprint, how we've thought about doing this, and we think everyone here's opportunity is to help figure out how to adapt this into their own context. In our view, the difference between companies that successfully transform and those that don't isn't like about resourcing. It's much more fundamentally about approach. It's the willingness to give people permission before you have all the answers. It's the understanding that your competitive advantage isn't just like having access to tools, because everyone's going to have those. The advantage is in how you deeply connect your people and integrate these capabilities into their work. So really practically start with your like immediate team. Dedicate like 4 hours next week to sharing like existing AI experiments that people have done. Identify like one inefficient workflow and start to use AI to improve it. Document the results and share them more broadly. Start building momentum through this more kind of ground up value. So again, at Canva, our mission centers on democratizing design, but fundamentally it's about like democratizing these like frontier capabilities, making these powerful tools and technologies accessible to everyone. And I think that's what AI transformation really represents. It's not just the technology, but it's the democratization of these advanced capabilities. So my challenge to all of you is, as like product professionals, you understand the systems, you build bridges between technology and human needs. So like go return to your organizations and become the catalysts for this change. Start small, but start immediately. Begin with this question of like, what would happen if we gave our team 4 hours to meaningfully experiment with AI? 4 hours. Future isn't about humans versus AI or humans replaced by AI. It's about humans amplified by AI. It's about returning to the work that made us choose our careers in the first place. It's that creative, that strategic, that like genuinely human work that machines can't do and won't ever be able to do. And I believe if you do this, the results will, likely greatly exceed your expectations. All right. Thank you all for listening. Excited to answer some questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing all of that, John. And while you were speaking, there were a bunch of really awesome questions that came in through the Q&A function. Note for everyone in this room, feel free to drop any questions that you still have in the Q&A function, upvote others. That's how we'll decide which ones get raised right now. But to start us off, let's start with this question from Nate. And Nate asks, referring back to phase one, which you talked about earlier in the presentation, in phase one, how did you address security and privacy within the organization? Were there any concerns within Canva about exposing private company data to the models? And if so, how did you address those?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the question. This is super critical to get right. And I think is also one of the reasons why both we wanted to get into these like enterprise accounts as soon as they were available so that we could have like much more usage aligned with our security values. Because again, at Canva, like we take all of our personal data and the data that users share with us like super like seriously. So in this first phase, like part of the like reason it was actually relatively short compared to the AI everywhere phase was because once we actually started to see a lot of the use cases that were happening in these smaller pockets where people did actually have, again, like enterprise licenses and things that where we had different data usage policies in place, we realized we wanted to get this out as wide as possible so that everything that everyone knew the right way of doing this, and that we can also like treat personal data alongside the rest of our values and the way we go about things. So again, that was like a huge part of what happened in phase one and why we kept it small to begin with, but also then rolled it out much wider using these enterprise accounts.
Awesome. Awesome. Our next question comes in from Ramya, and Ramya asks, how did you end up measuring the impact of AI in your organization? You mentioned some things around saving X hours in various teams, but how did you actually quantify that? What specific KPIs or feedback helped you figure out
Yeah.
if this specific initiative was successful or not?
Yeah, great question. I think it's very use case dependent, which is also why a lot of our approach has been to really push a lot of these things to the nodes. Like, so as examples for like an example within like performance reviews, a lot of that what we can actually do is just very simple. Like when in doubt, ask, send surveys, right? So you could actually have, small groups of users who could, self-report on their own, perform how long something takes before and after like a change. And that's like gives you a good baseline for things like for things like even in our sales processes and CRM tools, you can actually have a lot more like ground truth objective measurement of these things. But I think generally I would say like try the commonality across all of these is actually going through a process of actually like modeling some of the existing workflow that people go through manually today, and then figuring out what existing metrics you might have that represent that workflow. Or if you don't have any good ones, get some kind of baselines through something you could do one off, like sending a survey. But so I think that some of these workflows are generally going to be more automatable or more measurable than others. Something like again, help ticket resolution time is going to be super measurable for us, which is why some of those like internal Slack agents were such an obvious huge win for us in the short term.
Awesome. Our next question is around the theme of agents, and this comes from both JA and another pinch hit from Jordana. And going back to when you're talking about emerging use cases and some of the pre-packaged agents, it seems like there's this question around how did you do that? Was it something that Canva built internally? Was there sort of an internal marketplace of ideas?
Yeah.
You have a team internally that was building out these agents. How did you actually operationalize that?
Yeah, a lot of it. So in the earlier phases, a lot of it was just people were like really hyped. People were just really excited. So like for a lot of the GPTs that we shared, those were like created by individuals in the team. Like it was somebody in our in our talent team who like wanted to figure out how to use AI to help write great job posts. And once they had something that worked, they actually then just like shared it with their colleagues. Or actually our head of product marketing actually like loaded up a whole bunch of our existing product marketing collateral to help create like a PMM GPT. So again, I think a lot of this was really this like ground up enthusiasm that once it started to get shared and socialized, we could then actually start to more actively promote like in a more top-down manner. And I think that's like this like general feedback loop that happens is like encourage as many people to participate as possible, create the right channels for people to share these things, and then start to really spotlight the ones that are working super well.
Awesome. I love that approach. And I also remember that feeling when everyone was building GPTs for things. It was really exciting and awesome that, I could do it too. Great. Our next question comes in via Manoj. And, you know, I think a lot of us have been part of conventional hackathons, but Manoj asks, what have you learned about productizing AI ideas that's different from productizing conventional hackathon ideas?
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah. How much time do we have? No, just kidding. I think this is like a great question, great topic. I think the one of the like there's this trope that I've heard that is like I think a tweet or something. It's like the first the first week of building a new AI feature is complete bliss, but then the next like 2 months are just like filled with pain, right? Obviously that's like very overstated, but I think that the key learning is that it's very easy to like have a couple hero flows or kind of paths through like an AI thing that feel good and like feel really useful, but actually getting something that has all the like edges sanded off and that actually like has a very, very high quality bar across all the things that users can throw at it. That's where all the I think real like hard work comes in. So obviously mean everything from getting the right eval sets in place to having the right understanding of like your latency and quality trade-offs to building the right product experiences that more naturally go along with like the value that you're creating. All of this like kind of like I think is the new era of like deep product work that's required to actually like take any idea, whether it's from a hackathon or any other source, and make it really useful to people.
Awesome. Um, I would be remiss if I didn't call out that a couple people have asked whether you used AI in any form to create this presentation,
Oh
and
my
I
God.
thought I'd give
Yeah.
you a little chance to to answer that and give that some
I
airtime.
mean, yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? That's like, absolutely. I think that's one thing that Olivia and I have had a lot of fun, playing with in different ways. Like, I think personally, a lot of how my process starts, and this is true here, and I think it's true for a lot of like broader kind of, presentations or talks or papers that I'm writing or whatever. First of all, I'll try to just load in context. So prior things that I've written, that other people have written, that Canva has written about the material. And what I'll do is I'll actually do like my own voice dictation of like my own stream of consciousness of just like what I'm thinking about the material or the space. And then I'll basically just put all of that into an LLM and just have, hey, like come up with a cohesive mental model for these things and come up with like the 10 most important questions that I haven't actually answered yet that like feel like it would actually help round out the material. So in this very early phase, it's all about actually having AI help pull more out of me to actually help kind of get the full shape of the idea correct. And then once we have that, that's when it actually moves into more of like the narrative creation and actually starting to think about like, okay, what is the right arc? What is like the right arc going to be to help pull people through this more compelling story? Or, what is then the outline of this going to look like? So I say a lot of these steps are much more like AI augmented. I don't think, for this kind of thing, that this is a great example of where it's like a true like augmentation technology versus anything that's more automated. And then certainly when it comes to the actual like content creation itself, there was a fair amount of the Magic Studio tooling being used for everything from image generation to helping like create new layout permutations to helping auto generate some of the speaker notes within the product. So like it's definitely anytime I get to use Canva to talk about Canva, it's always like a very meta experience in using some of the stuff that we made ourselves.
We love that. Awesome. There are a couple questions here that I'm going to combine into one that are along the theme of, you've talked about how to increase AI adoption and impact generally among teams that are excited about it. But I think there's also this flip side of what about teams that are a little bit more hesitant or nervous, whether they're not
Yeah,
as technically advanced or just have
yeah.
some fears about job security, and would love to get your thoughts on what are some of the things that you recommend doing when working with those groups to help bring them along in the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is just something we thought about like a lot. And I think that was part of where, like when we talked about that, like that quote from Jensen about, like AI is not going to replace humans, but like the human using AI might kind of thing. Like we had to make a very big statement internally that our intention here is to not replace jobs, reduce headcount. It's to really like help like amplify what we're able to do. So it's like instead of saying, how do you take one person and have the work be able to be done by, like half a person or something. It's more about like how do you have one person be able to do three times more than what they're able to before. So I think a lot of it was just that reaffirmation through every single touch point that we've had internally about like what Canva's strategy is for rolling these things out and like how we see this impacting our business equation. I think the other huge part of it is all having this really tailor-made educational content that is super, super approachable to anybody, no matter what, whether you're like, don't know a lick of whether you're like very new to technology in general or whether you're, like a software engineer. And I think that like those different archetypes and actually mapping the content that we create in the learning programs to those archetypes, and especially making sure that like that is overly sampled towards these like non-technical personas. That was something that we actually were very, very deliberate about. And I think that actually has like really paid dividends. I think the way that I could tell that this was like really working well is when over half of the hackathon projects and the hackathon participants in this last AI Discovery Week were from like non-technical teams.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, Great. Our next question comes in via Manoj, and I'm gonna paraphrase a little bit. But I'm wondering with, as many reps as you and Canva have had at kind of organically developed AI-based solutions to things, with all of that pattern matching, are there any things that you've seen AI doesn't work particularly well for? Like you can kind of see it coming down the pipeline and you think, oh, this probably is not the best application of this group of technologies. Just kind of curious if you could share some of that pattern matching with us.
Yeah. So I think I have like three or four ideas in my head, but give me a second to like still it a little bit.
You got it. In the meantime, another plug, we're still looking at questions as they're coming in, still getting more upvote. So absolutely feel free to drop in more, upvote more, and we'll still take that into account.
So the biggest strength of these like at like large language model tools also can be its like largest weakness, which is that they're non-deterministic, right? Which means that you can ask the same question five times and get five different answers. So for a lot of things that are more like statistics or like math based, or like that's like not a good use case for like an LLM. What is successful though is like if you're trying to do a I don't know, you're trying to do like you're trying to like predict whether an increase in help center resolution rate leads to long-term user retention or something. Like, well, you might use you wouldn't want to just like have like, be like, hey, large language model, here's like, please fix, thanks, or something. Like what you want to do is actually like use the large language model to help you write like, a statistics model to help you actually like prove that thing, right? So I think so being able to use the large language model for something where the expectation is like like the same thing coming in is the same thing coming out isn't going to work very well. But when you can actually, but in those cases, sometimes you can actually change how you're using the AI to actually be about helping you create a new tool that is more deterministic in its outputs.
Awesome. And we have one question that's a little bit of a follow-up on an answer that you just gave about archetypes and personas when it comes to AI usage. And Ramya asks, how do you think about those archetypes? How do you define them? Is it based on usage patterns or something else?
Yeah, so I think I mean, a lot of it is it's based on like just there's like the whole more psychodemographic stuff, like what is somebody's role within the company, or like what is their prior job experience like. So there's generally like what is their comfort with new technologies. There's a huge aspect to it. I think there's other aspects of it which then like lead into just like how familiar are they with like these existing concepts. But I think, and those are the things I'd say that separate like the first two of what we call like the adventurer versus the explorer, right? So I think that like adventurer and kind of like getting to the point of an adventurer is like, okay, how much have you actually interacted with these like LLM tools or these Gen AI tools before? I think that like I think that once you're an adventurer, when maybe it's like, okay, I've done my first hello world prompts. I've had I've had ChatGPT create like a poem in the style of Dr. Seuss or something, and then like you become kind of an explorer when you start to actually realize, oh, like I can use this for a lot. I can kind of use this a lot more for a lot more wide range of things than I could have thought. So it's like often the adventurer has like one thing that they've thought they can kind of know AI can do. The explorer is then at a point where they're like, oh, like I can actually use this for a few different things because this is more of like a general purpose tool. I think you become more of like a pioneer, which is when you're like, oh my gosh, like I can use AI, like I can use AI for like all the things. And like there's really no internal workflow where this isn't at least worth trying, whether it can help me out. And then I think you become more of like a guide when you're like, oh, this is something that I literally can't stop talking about because and I can't I just can't wait to like tell everybody else like how this stuff works. So I'd say you can kind of model through that process, both like definitely like how much people are using the tools, but I think more qualitatively, it's about like the breadth of use cases that people have within their own lives for AI.
Amazing. And I think we have time for one last question before we wrap things up over here. And for our last one to end on, we have a question from Nate that I think is an interesting closing note. And I think a lot of us are used to thinking about customer facing products and adoption on that end. And Nate asks you to compare the effort for identifying and adopting internal AI tools relative to what it's
Hmm.
like when you're uh, adopting and incorporating AI in some
Yeah,
of Canva's customer facing products. How are they different, similar? Would love to hear your reflections on that.
this is great. I think I think a lot of the similarity happens in like the earliest phases of that like product development process around like conceptualizing and ideating and coming up with new ideas for like these workflows or new ideas and things like this. I think that one of the big differences though, and I think this is one of the biggest, most exciting things, but also the challenging things of building, products for 240 million people in like every country in the world across enterprises and students and individuals, is that we have to build these things that are hyper powerful, but also that like generalize super well. So that like really like the things that are going to move the needle for Canva are ones that like really a very large percentage of that 240 million people can get a lot of value from, or that like one segment like enterprise users can like really find super useful. And I think that's the part I think where it feels the most different than a lot of this more internal workflow stuff, where I think for like internal workflows, something can actually be a worthwhile effort of time if it saves like me and or like some of the people on my team a lot of time, right? So you can actually think a lot more like, I think, narrowed and more like maybe verticalized conceptually, where I think that within Canva, we have to think a lot more like holistically about these things, which also means there's a lot more considerations about different types of personas or use cases or archetypes. Whereas if I'm making, if I'm making something that's going to help me like write summaries or write-ups for like all the work that our team did every week, maybe it's okay if it just works for, product teams and it doesn't have to also work for, sales teams or support teams as an example. So I think that again, the generalization I think is where it's the most different, but I think a lot of that like ethos, that mindset, that iterative process of wanting to just see things working end to end. That's, I think, very, very, very similar.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'd love to first extend a big thank you to John for putting this talk together and for sharing your insights with us. I know I was really excited to hear a little bit more about how a company that's a little bit further along on the AI adoption journey has approached it and what you've learned along the way. So I appreciate that. Appreciate everyone that joined and shared a bunch of great questions. We had a great discussion at the end of the session. And with that, John, I will hand it back over to you for any closing words or bits of advice you want to impart before we close for the day.
No, thank you. I just want to just again extend a big thank you to yourself, to Olivia, to also just all the Canvanauts that were, went into making all this stuff just, be possible and bringing this to life, and to everyone here for, joining us for this journey. If you have any follow-up, questions or ideas, please do share them. We're always excited. And also give Canva a try if you haven't used it lately, because we have a lot of new fun stuff for y'all to poke around with and enjoy in your internal productivity or creating social posts, whatever you might need to create today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And with that, hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thanks, everybody.